Today, I'm going to be brutally roasting some watch brands. We've not done this sort of video for a while where, I talk a little bit of smack about some watch brands that have been rubbing me the wrong way. So today I've got 5 different watch brands that in one way or another, they're not sitting right with me at the minute. Now, some of these are for sure worse than others, right? There's a couple on here that only just about made the list, but don't worry, I'll let you know which ones are the worst offenders in the video. However, before we get into it, I've got a big announcement. Something unusual is coming. On the 1st of December at 3 p.m, some might say that the best affordable dress watch is releasing. If you're interested in knowing more about it, there's a link in the description. Give me your email address and you might find out. Okay, so brand number 1, we're starting off with a watch brand that I've never reviewed on the channel. I'll have to admit, I've never actually reviewed one of their watches. I've never got hands on. However, there's not really anything I like about this brand, and well, let me explain why. So the brand I'm talking about is, well, it's actually got 2 names. They changed their name recently, and I don't blame them. Originally known as Willie Merc. Yes, Willie Merc. Probably one of the worst names in watchmaking history. Awful, terrible. They recently rebranded to WM Watch, which I suppose is a little bit better. This is an AliExpress brand that for me is just a bit crap. I've got a couple of issues with these. They're not the worst offenders, by the way. I think they're pretty bad, but they're not the worst offenders. A lot of their designs are homages, right? They copy Rolex, Grand Seiko, Omega, the typical stuff that you usually see copied. The bit that I have a problem with is when they're copying micro brands. So WM Watch, they love to copy Christopher Ward. They love to copy Boulder for some reason, who's quite a small micro brand. Basically, they'll copy just about anything. Therefore, this is a brand that has, to me anyway, just zero identity. When you go into their catalogue and you scroll through, no watch sort of feels similar, right? It doesn't feel like the brand has an identity. It doesn't feel like they have a design language. It feels like they just make a bit of everything. Like, it's not even like they're making the trendiest watches at the minute. They sort of just make I don't know what their idea is. It doesn't make any sense to me. You've got your typical Rolex homage, but then you've got a Christopher Ward moonface homage, which you barely ever see. They've got a Christopher Ward diver homage, which, why would you homage Christopher Ward? Go and do something more popular. It doesn't make any sense to me. Your typical Daytona, your Oyster Perpetual, even Hublot. The homage in Hublot, that's how low this brand has gone. For me, I just look at this brand, they've got a Sega design homage. They're copying another Chinese brand. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. Clearly, this is just a watch brand that just makes watches to make money. That's it. There's no passion, there's no idea behind the brand, there's nothing they want to achieve. They're just making watches to make a quick buck. And you know what? I don't even think their watches are that well priced. I mean, some of these are like 250 quid. 250 quid for a diver. You can get a proper micro brand watch for £250 that will be built, the same level of quality as this. And another thing about them that, really set off my sort of dislike towards this brand, they just don't leave me alone. I've never given my email address. I've never even spoke to them, but I've had like 30 emails from them offering me watches for review. Now, usually if someone doesn't reply to you, once or twice, you leave them alone. They're clearly not interested. But this brand won't leave me alone. They just carry on emailing me over and over again. It feels like every week I'm getting an email off them. Would you like to review this watch, this watch, this watch, this watch? No, Willie Merc, I don't want any of your crap watches. Leave me alone, thank you. So next up, we've got another brand that's even worse than Willie Merc. I know I didn't think it was possible, but like this brand is like bottom of the barrel. I'm not joking. I don't think there is a brand on the planet that I dislike more than this. So let me introduce you guys to Specht and Zone. Everything from top to bottom about this brand is just honestly disgusting. First of all, the name, Specht and Zone, German name. They've probably never even been to Germany, but they've got a German name, right? Then you go on their website, they've got a picture of Steve McQueen. What association does Specht and Zone have with Steve McQueen? I'll tell you, none, zero. No association whatsoever. Clearly, it's just there to like, oh, Steve McQueen's a popular figure in the watch world. Let's put a picture of Steve McQueen there. Might get us a couple of extra sales. Just again, what are we doing? And then we come on to the watches, right? And, where Willie Merc sort of copied, a lot of other stuff and they had no sort of identity, Specht and Zone, these guys are even worse. There is literally, when you scroll through the catalogue, not one even slice, not even a millimetre of originality. Everything, and I mean everything, is just a carbon copy of another watch. Now listen, I get the homage thing, right? Luxury watches are expensive. You might want to get that sort of design for cheap. I personally wouldn't, but I know some people do. I do get the vintage homage, watches that you can't buy anymore, watches that are rare, watches that are in bad condition. Getting a homage to that makes a lot of sense to me. That's something I would do. However, homages to modern watches for me seems a little bit silly. However, the thing that I've I've never understood and something that I've always been against. The homage to an affordable watch, and especially the homage to an affordable micro brand watch. Micro brands, you know, they're not these big $1 million companies. Some of them struggle, right? They're family run businesses. They're trying their best to make some cash to fulfill their dream. A lot of them are passion projects, you know, by people who are spending months, years designing these watches, spending a lot of money to bring them to market. And you've got brands like Specs and Zone coming in and stealing that hard work. It genuinely makes me a bit angry. So these guys have stolen from everybody. There's no limit on who they'll steal from. You've of course got your typical stuff, your Patek, your AP, your Vacheron, your Rolex, even Tag Heuer, you know, that's your typical stuff that you usually see. They steal from Revelot, again, another really small micro brand. And one thing that annoyed me is a couple of days ago, they put on their Instagram story a picture of a Boblou, right? A beautiful French watch, gorgeous piece. And they was like, ooh, should we steal it, guys? Should we steal it? Should we make this completely stolen watch? Leave them alone. Go make something else. Honestly, I mean, it really annoys me. Buy a Casio. Don't buy this crap. It's crap. Some of these are like £35. What are you expecting for 35 quid? What are you gonna get? You're gonna get a bag of buttons. It's gonna be terrible. Don't support this nonsense, and it is proper nonsense. There is zero passion, zero respect for watchmaking, for the culture around watchmaking, the watch community. This is just purely set up by someone who doesn't give a shit to try and make as much money as they can. Okay, I need to calm down because we're getting into the area now where it's not as bad, okay? We've sort of peaked there at the worst of vendors, right? Let's calm down. Okay, next up, and this one genuinely hurts me, and some people might have been expecting this one. I know, Seiko. Now, these are probably the least sort of worst offenders on this video, but they've been disappointing me recently. Seiko is a brand that I have massive respect for. When it comes to affordable heritage watchmakers, they're probably my favorite, and I mean that. I have bought a lot of Seikos in the past. I've probably owned about 10 of them, so this is a brand that I love. I've put my money into it. I've bought a lot of watches from them. But for me, over the last couple of years, they've really been letting the collectors down, I think anyway. Prices, too high. They're just too high for what you get, you know, for the quality, for the movements, for the clasps, and for the end links. It's too high. And then also, they've just not been releasing anything. You know, this year, it's been quiet from Seiko. It's been really quiet. I want to be a fan of Seiko. In fact, I've currently got a Seiko that I'm trying to buy because I really like it. It's from about 4 or 5 years ago. However, modern Seiko, sort of the newest releases over the last year or two, for me have just been a big letdown. One watch specifically that really sort of annoyed me was they've released a new digital watch recently. And when I first saw it, I thought, oh my God, that thing is incredible. Like, look at it. It looks so cool. K-shape, bezel, I thought this is a really cool watch, right? However, I found out the price of it, and then I found out that it had a mineral crystal. And I thought, how is Seiko charging that much for a digital watch with a mineral crystal? And I was shocked, genuinely so shocked. For me, that was just a big letdown. I just feel disappointed. I would have genuinely bought that watch if it featured a sapphire glass. I would have paid as much as they're asking for it with a piece of sapphire. It's not difficult to me, you know. The sapphire is not that expensive these days. And, you know, with all these micro brands popping up left, right, and center, it becomes clear that Seiko are really lagging behind in the specification department. They're still releasing some great designs, and I am a design-first collector, don't get me wrong. But for me, there should be a baseline of quality. And the baseline of quality is just like a decent clasp and a sapphire crystal. You know, I'm not asking for much. And if you're not going to use those things, understandable, then, you know, you've got to lower your prices. For me, there's way too many watches in the Seiko catalogue that are asking for £500 for a mineral glass. It's criminal. I don't agree with it. So although, yes, Seiko is my favourite heritage watchmaker, I've bought a lot of watches from them, I'll probably continue to buy a lot of watches from them. For me, at the minute, what they're doing is just, yeah, I'm not happy with it. Okay, so then we've got Sega Design. Okay, Sega Design, for me, is a brand that I really want to like. Unlike Willy Merck and Specs and Zone, where they just had no identity, I feel like Sega Design is a brand that does have an identity. They clearly have an idea of what they want the brand to be and where they want to go with it. However, there's just some key factors that they're missing that for me something just isn't working with the Sega Design brand. First of all, the website's terrible. Like, considering, you know, they're selling quite expensive watches, over £1,000, this website is trash. It's so bad, it feels like an AliExpress page, genuinely. Like, when you're scrolling around the product pages, I don't know who's designed this website, but they need to hire someone to do a better job. Then the second problem is that their watches are massive. Their Blue Planet, 46mm, massive, right? Their other watches, 43, 44, 45, super thick, huge lug to lug. Why are they making watches so big? The thing is, I really like the designs. I like the skeleton pieces. I think they're cool, but they're making them massive. It doesn't make any sense. For me, if I was at Sega Design, I'd say, We've got some really cool designs here. What we need to do is we need to make them a bit smaller. Aim for 40mm with every watch, because it's a nice size that works for the majority of people. Now sure, offer a couple of pieces bigger, offer a couple of pieces smaller so that everybody can be happy, right? You're targeting everybody. At the minute, you're only targeting people with like 8-inch wrists. It doesn't make any sense. And then the worst part is when they do release a smaller watch, you know, and I say smaller, 43mm, they released a ceramic version of the Blue Planet in 43mm, and Sega Design calls it a woman's watch. 43mm. You are literally alienating, what, 90% of people. You're alienating your biggest audience, your biggest demographic by calling it a woman's watch. Now, I don't care about that. I still think it's a cool watch. I tried it on when I was in New York, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get one of these at some point to review. It's not a woman's watch. It's just not. It's 43mm. Sort out your website. Stop telling us which watch belongs to what gender. I don't care. Let people decide what they want to wear. And also, just make your watches a bit smaller. Okay, and another one that hurts me a little bit, you know, a bit like Seiko, where, you know, I'm a fan of this brand deep inside, you know, Swiss watchmaker Tissot. And, you know, again, it does hurt me a little bit. A bit like AP, where they've become the Royal Oak Company. I feel like Tissot is in danger of becoming the PRX company. Yes, the PRX was a massive hit. You can do a lot worse for the money, right? It's a sort of a good baseline of a decent watch for the cash. However, they're just beating it to death, right? Every color going, different case materials, different dials, different movements, quartz, digital, automatic, 38, 35, 40. It's all just a bit of a mess. And for me, what's really disappointing about Tissot in particular is that they have one of the best back catalogues in watchmaking. Tissot has made some of the best looking watches of all time, in my opinion anyway. Some of their vintage pieces are to die for. However, you come into the modern catalogue and you don't see any of them. I thought after the release of the PRX, we'd see more of this from Tissot. They'd reach into their back catalogue, they'd find a design that they think would work for the modern market, they'd upgrade the materials, obviously, and release it at a good price, 500-ish pounds. But nope, they've not done that at all. In fact, their newest release, they've made a watch that looks like a Datejust. This Roman numeral, fluted bezel, you know, yeah, let's make a Datejust look alike. I suppose, yeah, why not? You know, you've not got all those good looking watches in the past to play on. Just, yeah, make one that looks like a Datejust, why not? Deep down, I'm a big fan of this brand. I've got a lot of respect for them. However, when I look at the modern Tissot catalogue, I just feel uninspired. They've got a couple of nice watches. The Gentleman's pretty cool. The Leloc is beautiful, but they've really not kicked on since the PRX. You know, such a success. I'm guessing they made loads of money from it, and it just feels like they've let that momentum come to a standstill. Yes, they've just released the 38mm PRX, probably, what, 3 years too late? The PRX is a great starter watch. It's got a good level of quality for the money. You know, it's a watch that I would recommend to somebody that's just starting collecting watches, but I want something for the collectors, for the die-hard enthusiasts. I look at Tissot and it's a very good brand on surface level, but then when you dig a little bit deeper, you're sort of missing that sort of substance underneath, at least for me. So there you go. It wasn't too bad, was it? Hopefully not. Hopefully not. Don't buy a Spectre Zone. Worst offenders. Oh, genuinely disgusting. Hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to keep it calm in the comments, okay? Don't shout at each other. You can shout at me if you want, that's fine, but just keep it calm, okay? If you enjoyed it, drop me a like rating. I appreciate you, and I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Bye for now.